The future Auschwitz guard started her journey by trying to heal people. A decade later, this 22-year-old woman would stand on a British scaffold. But in the autumn of 1938, Irma Grese was just a rejected teenager with no prospects. She dropped out of local school at 15. Born on October 7, 1923, she lost her childhood quickly. Berta Grese took her own life when her daughter was exactly 13. Silence filled the empty house. Her rigid father, Alfred, remained emotionally detached from his children, ignoring their grief. The teenage girl walked alone across the northern German dirt, while the freezing wind bit her face. There was no emotional support left for her. By 1938, Germany expanded its military power and industrial factories. For a teenage girl without a basic diploma, she could only work the muddy fields or serve in wealthy homes. The local hospital denied her application. The nursing program sent an official refusal letter. She was left to endure heavy manual labor on a rural farm. The hospital refusal anchored her to rural labor until 1942, when another structure welcomed her without questions. How did a farm girl acquire such sweeping authority? She volunteered for the SS Women's Auxiliary, joining roughly 3,500 female SS Gefolge guards who received salaries unavailable in civilian life. Ravensbrück training routines erased their ordinary empathy, teaching recruits to command terror and inflict pain. She traded agricultural dirt for a pressed uniform and immediate dominance over the prisoners. Superiors noticed her lack of hesitation. In 1943, command signed her transfer order to a new camp. That transfer order placed her directly on the Auschwitz selection ramp in 1943. Irma Grese stands before a silent line of prisoners. She raises her braided whip. A flick to the left sends a woman to the gas chambers. A flick to the right grants a few more weeks of forced labor. The sharp crack of leather striking the ground dictates who survives the afternoon. She decides entire destinies in mere seconds. In 1944, the Birkenau women's sector held up to 90,000 inmates. Grese single-handedly controlled vast compounds packing tens of thousands of people. Polished black boots gleamed against the damp camp mud. A heavy braided whip and a loaded pistol hung on the belt of this 20-year-old girl. She moved through the dirt with full confidence. She knew her status was untouchable. This was not quiet obedience to military orders. She found genuine pleasure in the psychological dominance. Survivors remembered her pacing through the barracks. A wrong step or accidental eye contact guaranteed instant physical violence. She unleashed attack dogs on prisoners too exhausted to maintain formation. Starving women collapsed under the fangs while the young overseer watched them bleed. When victims broke down and wept, witnesses saw her smile. Their terror provided her with deep personal satisfaction. Her cruelty possessed no predictable pattern. One minute she simply ignored a passing inmate. The next minute she delivered a sudden beating without any clear cause. By early 1945, her unpredictable nature made her deeply feared across the entire complex. There was no place to hide. 60,000 exhausted people remained trapped inside a locked perimeter without basic resources. When Soviet troops approached Auschwitz early in 1945, guards forced the surviving prisoners westward. Irma Grese accompanied these columns through freezing temperatures during the notorious death marches. Command transferred her to Bergen-Belsen, a facility already buckling under the weight of severe overcrowding and unchecked disease. The suffocating stench of typhus and human decay hung heavy in the spring air. Tens of thousands of unburied bodies lay across the compound. Camp administrators had abandoned any pretense of providing food or water to the inmates. Yet, amidst this total organizational failure, Grese maintained her daily routine of violence without any noticeable change. British forces finally breached the main camp perimeter on April 15, 1945. Advancing soldiers discovered emaciated survivors wandering aimlessly among the dead and dying. Instead of fleeing the approaching Allied army, Grese remained exactly where she was stationed. She stood perfectly upright among the mountains of corpses, dressed in an immaculate guard uniform. An Allied soldier approached the young woman to demand identification. She faced her captors with calm composure, showing no sign of panic or regret. When asked for her identity, she provided her name clearly, without a moment of hesitation. Military police arrested her immediately, right in the middle of the devastated compound. She was 21. The British military tribunal transferred the young guard straight from the camp dirt to a formal trial. Irma Grese sat on the defendant's wooden bench and smiled calmly while listening to the emaciated survivors. The Lüneburg Hall echoed with a steady hum of voices. She showed zero emotion. The Belsen trial exposed every action from her shifts. Witness after witness stood before the court. They testified about lethal beatings. They recounted guards whipping women until their bodies gave out and they lost consciousness. 44 camp staff members faced the judges, but Grese stood out through her sheer indifference. Hearing the heavy testimonies, she offered no apologies. She maintained her cold confidence. "I had my orders. It was my duty." The 22-year-old viewed her terror simply as a completed task. On November 17, 1945, the military judges reached their final decision. The judge read the sentence of death by hanging. A gray dawn illuminated the heavy stone walls of Hameln Prison in December 1945. That courtroom decision had left the condemned with less than 30 days to live. The morning was bitterly cold. British occupation forces utilized this specific high-security facility to execute convicted war criminals. Inside the quiet courtyard, soldiers worked through the freezing weather. Executioners tested the wooden drop mechanisms. They assembled the platforms. They secured the ropes. One specific structure waited for a 22-year-old woman. Her full name was Irma Ilse Ida Grese. Survivors across Europe recognized that name. They remembered a guard with blonde hair and blue eyes. The nickname Hyena of Auschwitz meant nothing in this yard. The cold reality of the military prison stripped away all her former authority. Before this month, she controlled thousands of lives. Now, she simply waited for her designated time. The guards finished their inspection. The courtyard held 5 wooden gallows. One of those wooden structures in Hameln waited specifically for Irma. What did the Auschwitz guards say a second before death? One word. On December 13, 1945, just before 10 in the morning, her cell door unlocked. She stepped into the cold corridor. Guards bound her hands tightly behind her back. She walked steadily toward the execution chamber. She showed no hesitation and no fear. Executioner Albert Pierpoint waited for her by the rope. Over the post-war years, the British hangman executed more than 200 convicted Nazis. He slipped the noose around her neck and pulled a hood over her face. Beneath the dark canvas, the condemned woman gave her final command. Schnell, faster. The hollow thud of the wooden trapdoor echoed through the execution block. Her body dropped. Later, soldiers buried her in an unmarked grave without a memorial. Outside, there was only silence. Soldiers buried her in an unmarked grave on December 13th, but her name entered the court archives. Psychologists searched for a hidden childhood trauma, yet they documented only a conscious choice. The state never forced her into the camp command structure. She actively sought this rank, using terror to secure her authority. Deep whip scars remained visible on the survivor's skin for decades, preserving her identity. Her victims did not face a terrifying monster. They remembered a young, ordinary-looking girl who managed mass murder with complete calmness. The historical record of her crimes is permanently preserved within the trial documents and survivor testimonies.